And as I was looking at Elaine, I was thinking, man, she has piercing blue eyes like my dad. And I thought to myself, I had this overwhelming feeling that was coming up, surging up through me. And I thought, I'm going to cry. That's me, Kevin, and this is the Yoga Life Podcast. Hello there, I hope you had a nice week. Welcome back to episode 12 of the Yoga Life Podcast with just me, Kevin. No guest today, I'm doing a solo effort. This is a reflection of module 2, my Bryce teacher training. The first module was back in March. That was 16 days in a row, and this time it was 10 days, so 300 hours done. So I'm going to take you through day 1 right up to day 10, everything that I experienced, maybe some of the stuff you didn't see on social media, kind of a BTS, that's a new acronym I learned, behind the scenes, if you will, of the training. It was made clear from the outset before we started the course that this module was going to be more hands-on. In the first module we learnt the ideas and the concepts, and this one was going to be how we were going to apply them. So how we would essentially be practice teaching. And seeing those two words, practice teaching, put together, put the fear of God in me a little bit, because although I am quite a confident person, when you're teaching in front of your peers, it's pretty nerve-wracking. And also we were told that we were going to be doing a lot more physical adjustments as well, which, to be honest, since the first module back in March, I didn't apply any of that. I did very little physical adjustments, if any. I didn't really have the confidence to do that in class, in public classes. So how they structured it was, there was 10 days in a row, then we had 2 half days where we finished at 2 o'clock. Day 1, we started pretty early. We would get in before 7, do same format as before, do a 2-hour practice. This would include pranayama, singing, chanting, meditation or kirtan, and then about an hour and a half physical practice. After that we would go through some asana or philosophy or business, have our lunch, come back, then break down certain asanas where we help to physically adjust each other, and then we'd finish in the evening with another hour and a half practice. So the first day I showed up this time round, I was completely overwhelmed, which is very unlike me. I've always been a bit of a social butterfly. Growing up, I was, for want of a better word, pretty popular in school. I was a prom king of my school. That kind of means like people like you, which is always nice. Better to be liked than disliked, I guess. But as I've grown older, and particularly since I've stopped partying and kind of acting the fool, really, I've become a little bit more serious. I treat my life with more structure and have more intensity in what I'm doing. And I feel it's because I now have a bit more direction. Before I started teaching yoga and actually getting up in the morning and looking forward to doing my job, I used to mess about in work, and I used to enjoy being the clown and in my life in general. But a lot has changed for me recently, particularly in the last year since I've been teaching full time, and that became really apparent in this module versus the last one in March. Because on the first day I walked into Hot Yoga Dublin, which is a lovely studio up in North Dublin, and the noise level was really high. Everyone was excited, hugging each other, buzzing to see each other, and it was too much for me. I couldn't handle it. I just lay down on the floor, put my mat down, and just like put my hands over my face and just chill there, because I just found it. I couldn't really deal with all the intense interaction and seeing everyone and catching up. I don't think that's a bad thing. Last module, whenever a question was asked, or there was a chance to ask a question in the class, I'd stick my hand up and want to show off what I knew and try and be the centre of attention. And I've realised that I've just changed, and I think we all do. I want to take a back seat now, and so that was a bit of a surprise for me, and everyone kept coming up to me asking me, which is really nice, asking me, "Are you okay? Is everything all right? Are you sick?" I says, "I'm not sick. I just don't really want to know what you've been doing for the last 6 months." That sounds terrible, doesn't it? It's not that massively important to me. I know from social media, and happy to catch up over lunch, one-on-one or a little group, but just everyone in a room, it was a bit too much for me. But so that was day one, and funnily enough, ironically, the focus on day one was to talk about effective communication. So we talked about how to listen with empathy and how to receive information from someone else without jumping in, without making your point or trying to show them that you understand by telling a similar story. And this can be really difficult. So for people in general, because we're not really good at listening, are we? We're all good at talking, but listening is so difficult. So they split us up into partners. I was with someone I knew quite well, and it's funny that, it's kind of talking about empathy. My partner, we had to tell like a personal story that moved us, or something to that effect. And my partner, while telling her story, began to cry. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the best way to react was. I thought, okay, I can't react by saying, "That's okay, it happened to me too," because that's me butting in. Should I hug them? Should I put my hand on them? Sometimes that can make someone worse, even more upset when they're crying. So I was having to rethink how I listened to someone, which was fascinating. And then it started making me think, man, I can't remember the last time I cried. I don't know. I'm sure that's not a good thing. I was thinking, Kev, have you actually lost your ability to communicate with people, or are you getting rusty, in your old age? So we did that task, and that was kind of interesting. Then we went back and perhaps seen how we could apply that to a class when you're teaching. We talked about effective cueing, so there was action, passive and reinforcement cues, and how the reality is a lot of us teachers just use action cues. So step your right foot forward, and we don't use other cues to make our teaching stronger. So that was brilliant. It was so useful, and Dice and Bry really broke that down so well, because we knew that 10 days we were going to have to be teaching in front of each other, so this is information we can use straight away. Those 10 days weren't as physically challenging as what they were in the first module. I think because we were ready for it, we knew what to expect. So all the handstands, it wasn't that much of a surprise. And also, again, the focus was on how do we apply our teaching skills as opposed to how well can we handstand. So there's a lot more hands-on adjustments and assisting. And I felt way more comfortable doing it this time because we knew each other and we could practice this in more depth. And I'm pleased to say that since then, since the 10 days has finished, I've do way more straight away. As soon as I had my first public class after the training, I was doing physical adjustments. I was doing them with things like Trikonasana. So I was doing the yummy adjustments, which is when you, say someone's in child's pose and you put your hands on their lower back and give them a little massage, or just press down the lower back a little bit. That's to make them feel good. And then I was doing the alignment adjustments as well. So I've been doing both now, which is, I'm buzzing, because it's great that we had that continuity between the first module and the second module, because then you're going to apply it. It's going to stick when you've had a bit of time to realise, oh, I haven't been doing this for the last few months, and now I get a chance to really practice it with my peers. So fast forward to the actual teaching itself, teaching our peers, I realised that you get into bad habits as a teacher. You think you're doing things the optimal way just because you've always done it that way. So Bry and Dice split us up, put us into two groups, and we did some class format training. So essentially we would have a spreadsheet, and we would have 6 sections of the class. The first would be opening in Series A, then you'd have Series B warm up and flow, you do your externals, then you do standing twists, peak, pose and core, you do your active and your passive counters, and then you do your closing inversions, your cool down, your shavasana or meditation. And this was brilliant because it made me realise that my classes can be way more balanced. So we split that up, we did out a class, and then we essentially talked through the class to our peers, and they chipped in and gave their feedback. That was massively helpful. Then when it came to actually teaching each other, this wasn't done till about halfway through the 10 days, and or it was actually closer towards the end. And we were told before we would have a full class, so a full flow, and then each person would have a different sequence of that class. So one person would do the intro, and then the next person would do the warm-up, next person would do Series A, which was me, and so forth. We were told that we'd be reviewed on our voice projection, our tone, our modulation, how we used our cues, the pace, our adjustments, and our presence. So this was how we would walk the room. And when I knew this day was coming, I actually didn't prepare at all, which probably sounds counterintuitive. Why wouldn't you prepare for something that you're really nervous for? But my theory was, why not teach, or I should teach, in the way that I always teach. This is how I teach a public class, so I can get true, honest feedback on what I've been doing for the last 6 months, as opposed to just designing like a sequence and teaching a sequence that isn't really my authentic self. So that's what I did. It was interesting because the feedback I got, Brian and Dice sat in the corner taking notes, and the feedback that I got was that I walked too much, which I know I did. I paced around the room, like a caged lion. I was that was to hide my nerves. And I had once heard something brilliant. I don't know, I can't remember who it was from, but it may have been Adam Husler, I'm not sure. But it was to speak and walk, one or the other. So don't do both at the same time. Stand still, say your cue, and then walk. But don't do both, because it can be a little bit intimidating when you're pacing behind people and they're in down dog. I did do adjustments, though. That's the first thing I did. I made sure, as soon as it was my turn to come up, everyone was in down dog. I went straight over to the nearest hips I could find, placed my hands on them to press them down. I was like, great, I've broken that barrier. I've got my hands on someone. I'm doing an adjustment. And that's what I do now in class. As soon as people come to down dog, I find someone who could need an adjustment, and I help them out. And then boom, I've broken that barrier. I've done my first adjustment, and the rest from there are easier. I think my pace was pretty good. I purposely spoke slowly, because when you're nervous, you speak fast. My cues, they were the same cues I always do, were mostly action-based cues. And my voice projection, tone, modulation, I think they're always pretty good. I think my voice is one of my strengths. But that day it was a bit quivering. It was quivering a little bit, although I tried to hide it. So when they did a brilliant way of, we didn't find out till 2 days afterwards what our feedback was, But when we did, it was done on the actual graduation day. And so they sit us all around, they have a stack of certificates, and it's quite clever how they did it. We would say, okay, we're going to start describing traits of this person, and then you have to guess who it is. So we're all sitting around, and Dice says, okay, the first person, didn't say he or she, is a full-time teacher in Dublin. They have been living here for a while, or something like this, and lo and behold, it was me. So I went up to collect my certificate, got my photograph, standard, and then sat down, and it was the same for everyone else. And what I noticed was they didn't give any negative feedback, they only gave positive, and then you could read the negative feedback, not negative feedback, you could read the advice or room for development section in your own time. And I think that's really important, particularly in Ireland, because we have culturally, we Irish English people, we want to say, have a tendency to put ourselves down anyway, and that was really apparent with all the some of the trainees who would constantly doubt themselves, even me, who would generally consider ourselves, quite confident. So that was good, because you don't want to give someone, for want of a better word, negative feedback in front of all their peers, especially on the last day. It's just a bit of a downer. So that was really well done. And so everyone got their certificate. We all had a big hug, hugged each other, and then we went out for our graduation dinner. Bry and Dice took us to this lovely new restaurant that had opened up locally in Malahide, and it was vegetarian, really nice setting. We all sitting like random seats, and it was nice. It was really nice to go out with dinner. But I actually noticed one thing, that I was sitting on a big long table right at the end, and I was with all the 20-odd-year-olds, kind of late, people in their 20s. Almost everyone was on their phone practically for the whole evening. I looked down the other end of the table, people in their late 30s, early 40s, talking, having a conversation. I was thinking, man, these people are nice, but can I move? I want to talk, as opposed to take pictures of things. But that's the self-employed hustle, isn't it? You have to publicise everything. I'm guilty of it myself, but I do think though phones at dinner time shouldn't be allowed. I'm going to keep an eye on that myself, making sure I'm not checking my phone at dinner. But yeah, it was great. I didn't stay out for long, as always. Didn't have anything to drink, but it was nice to be out with everyone and actually see everyone in non-yoga clothes, in their fancy gear. Then something. Okay, so we had this thing we did on the very last day, which was like acro day / partner yoga activity, and we did this in the first module. They lined us up, and it was really fun. The little sequence had the music they had. It was kind of like a party, and it's really good. But then towards the start of the activity, we lined up with each other, and we looked across. So we had to basically look at the other person. It was an eye contact exercise, and it just so turns out, coincidentally, I was facing opposite the person, Elaine, who's a really lovely person, that I was facing last module. I keep saying last year. And we kind of thought, oh, this is funny, it's me and you again looking at each other. Okay, here we go. So you look at each other. We're about not even a yoga mat length away from each other, and I'm looking across at her, and Briohny is talking us through it. She's saying, look, initially you're going to feel a bit of discomfort. You may laugh because it's slightly awkward, but see if you can put that to one side and let that subside. And I thought, okay, so we stopped laughing. Then we looking at each other. We weren't smiling then really, and I thought, well, this could be kind of aggressive, almost this like level of eye contact without smiling. And then she said, look at the person. And as I was looking at Elaine, I was thinking, man, she has piercing blue eyes like my dad. And I thought to myself, I had this overwhelming feeling that was coming up, surging up through me. And I thought, I'm going to cry. And the reason was that I don't think I've ever looked at my dad for that long. And yeah, there it was. My chin started to shake, and the reaction on Elaine's face made me cry even more, because her brow started to furrow. You could see the empathy in her eyes when I was started to cry. I mean, I wasn't sobbing, but I was really trying to hold back, completely just fall on the floor, crying. It was very strange and very powerful. I don't know what to read from that. Out of respect to my dad, I won't try to psychoanalyze why that could be too much. But I suppose I can't, full disclosure, I think it's a generation thing. I think that my dad grew up in a tough environment, and he had to struggle a lot in his life, worked really hard. And men of that generation, who they are more emotionally, men of our generation are more emotionally in touch. We're more softer, I suppose, or just more comfortable with that type of conversation, in that type of with our feelings. Even you can see how I'm struggling to talk about this. It's just something I thought, wow, it's such a small thing to look at someone, to really look at them without speaking. You can tell a lot by someone, because we all put on this mask, particularly the mask of masculinity. And I thought, man, the next time I see my dad, I'm really going to look at him. I'm going to not, because it's actually me. I'm the one that finds it awkward, because my dad's a great guy. It's a long story. Maybe I'll talk about it another time. But yeah, it's definitely left a mark on me, and it was a valuable exercise. Again, after it ended, it was only a minute or so, which seemed like a lifetime. Gave Elaine a hug, and we kind of moved on from there. But man, crying, it tires you out. It's exhausting, isn't it? Funnily enough, the day before, I went for lunch with Bruce. Shout out to Bruce, Bruce Chung, who was on the course, and we were talking about masculinity, and I was saying that I couldn't remember the last time I cried, and that I didn't have a reason to, but and then the next day, waterworks. So and then after all of that ended, we did some partner yoga, and I had so much fun then. That kind of gave me a bit of a release, that I could be a bit more relaxed. And we did some partner yoga, some acro yoga, and we were singing, like we were arms around each other, and we were singing. And it was a little bit cheesy, like what I think is a little bit cheesy, just because, again, that's my issue. I'm uncomfortable with dancing and singing, unless I'm drunk, and I don't drink anymore, or unless the dancing is something I've initiated, and it's but everyone else loved it, so there you go. There's always the one miserable soul, which was me. So that was the last day, all that business, and that was really good fun. And then to end it all off, when we were at the dinner, actually, Dice was walking out. He came, he had a pint of Guinness, didn't get a chance to chat to him, but he was like, "Hey dude," and he just points over at my table. I'm like looking around like, "What? Who, me? He goes, you coming climbing tomorrow? I said, oh, yeah, trying to be like, oh yeah, sure. And and he goes, cool, I'll see you tomorrow. So he went off, and everyone looked at me going, what, you and Dice going climbing? I said, yeah. I was thinking, don't invite anyone else. And then I did, I invited, well, it wasn't me to invite, but I just said it to the other lads and anyone else who went to come. But yeah, on the last day, had a half day. Dice, he drove Briohny and Co to the airport, and then came and met me, and we went climbing together, which is really cool, man. You know, it was just nice that he would take what offered and want to spend any time with me. You know, you think like God knows how many photographs he had to stand and take with people that day. I mean, everyone's asking for photograph, including me, and he's there constantly having to do these pictures. And I thought, I'm surely he wants to have some time on his own, and definitely away from a student. But no, he offered, you know, he asked me to go out climb with him, which was great. And yeah, I said to myself, as soon as you walked in that climbing centre, I said, Dice, where's your bag? And he showed me his bag. I put my wallet, put my phone, put everything I had in his bag, particularly, most importantly, my phone. I thought, I'm not going to take one picture, one Instagram story, and anything with while I'm spending time with Dice. I thought, respect the man as a human being, and not as someone I want to piggyback off his fame and be like, oh, look at me and Dice climbing together. I just thought, you know, that's not cool to do that, and hopefully we can be a bit more relaxed. And it was really cool, man, you know, to speak to him outside the classroom and get to know him. And yeah, he's just, I mean, there's no surprises. He was just as nice as I thought he would be. Yeah, we did some good training. Man, the geezer can climb. Bloody hell. I mean, like, stuff he can do. I was trying to keep up, like, I ripped loads of skin, I mean, proper ripped skin off my fingers. You know, I was just a scratch, no big deal. But it was great to actually climb with someone who was a far better climber than me, because I'm not used to that. I'm used to climbing people rough on the same level as me. And he was like, just put your leg there, put your leg there. And I nearly put, you know, my hip out of joint trying to keep up. But it was great because I've been back climbing since, and now I have a completely different approach because of him. He's shown me a new appreciation for the skill, the beauty of climbing. So it was great. You know, he said if you're ever in LA, give him a shout. He'll regret that. I'll be in LA. I'll be knocking on his door. But no, he's a great guy. So that was just the cherry on the cake for my 10 days with Bryce. I'm sure there's loads I'll probably think of, but I've made sure to make some notes, and these are my main takeaways, because I think there's so many trainings out there, and as Dice said himself, he tries to offer something unique. Him and Bry try to offer something unique, and I really feel the best thing about the training is Bry and Dice. You can go anywhere and learn how to handstand. Not anywhere, but there's loads of course that tell you how to handstand, but they were just, it's very hard to explain. Like, they're such nice, it's kind of ordinary people, and that's a compliment, down to earth. That, I mean, Dice said, you know, if ever there's workshops or trainings that are on, give us a shout. They sent together their mobile phone numbers, and said, give us a shout, and you can come along, help us out, or we pay for flights, accommodation, and if you do a workshop, you can come along for free. And yeah, I just thought, because they see it as like a family, and I do now. When I watch Yoga Globe, I'm only watching Dice's classes, really, because I feel like I know the guy. I mean, I know him better than any of the other kind of in quote unquote celebrity yogis. And yeah, same with Bry. So to recap, I'd highly recommend Bryce training. It gets you out of your comfort zone, which I needed. it brought up some things for me and showed me how I've changed as a person, and I think that's really good. I think that I've been reading a lot about Buddhism lately, and I was reading a lot of Carl Jung stuff, and talking about ego, and how a healthy ego is one that doesn't have limitations, that knows that it can evolve, that isn't tied to a strict identity. And I've been recently thinking, man, I'm not like I used to be. This is a bad thing. I feel like I don't have a concrete identity as I used to. I used to be like play football, party, like going out, and be a bit of a clown. And I was a bit one-dimensional in that respect. But now I'm much more of a free spirit, and part of that can be a bit unsettling, but only if you allow it to be. I realise that I've changed a lot, and that I can change more, and that I'm more conscious of that. I mean, I've got a lot of... we're all a work in progress, and to be aware of that's really important. So, yeah. Oh, last thing, which you already know, Bryce and Dice were kind enough to go on my podcast. If you haven't heard them, Bryce was the last episode, and Dice was the one before, so episode 11 and 10. And that was so cool of them, man. We just went down to the car park, and like this underground car park, got in the car, and just chatted. They only had like half an hour each with them, which is fair enough because they're on a tight schedule. But that was brilliant, for them to do that. I didn't think they'd ever do it. I threw out there, but yeah. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Sorry if I'm not very succinct and polished with how I'm speaking, but it's actually quite difficult to speak when you've got no one to bounce off and just carry on talking. I really recommend the guys. If you've got any questions, feedback, let me know. And if there's anything else you'd like to know that maybe I haven't covered, or if you are actually on the course and there's anything I've missed that you found really, really important and that helped you, I'd love to hear, because I only have one pair of ears, so it'd be great to hear other people's perspectives. That's all I have to say. I hope you have a great week. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to me go on, and I will catch up with you next week when I have Jake Wood from So We Flow on the podcast. Have a great week.